I am now going to introduce our moderator, a panelist for Black Gamers Matter. You want to go ahead to the stage? Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to introduce you to one of our corporate partners and one of my fellow classmates. I love it because Black don't crack. Our Belinda Shannon, Vice President of Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Belonging at Scopely. How many people have heard of Scopely before today? Show of hands. Okay, so two people. Well, first of all, they make some of the most amazing games that you play on your cell phones. We'll let you do those announcements again.
Oh, announce them again. Walking Dead, Road to Survival, Star Trek Fleet Command, Yahtzee with Buddies, WWE Champions, Looney Tunes, World of Mayhem, Marvel Strike Force, Scrabble Go, Bingo Bash, Tiki Solitaire, Tri-Peaks, Kingdom Maker, and Stumble Guys, and hundreds of studios around the world that we're in the process of developing games with.
So something else I want you guys to think about, if you haven't thought about it before, I know a lot of you prefer your PC and or your console games and or laptop video games. This mobile phone game business and apps is the truth. My mom is 71. She turned 71 on February 13th. And she is on her phone playing games every day. So imagine the amount of money and the opportunity that exists with creating games that you play right off your phone. And everybody's got a cell phone now, everybody. So don't just think about the traditional worlds, you know, of Sony and Xbox and the PC world and Nintendo, Atari, my world. You can Scopely phone video game, mobile phone games. There's an opportunity there. So she is going to be moderating this next panel. She's one of our corporate partners. She's Vice President of Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Scopely. She actually was originally lived right here in this area in the Research Triangle, and she is now on the West Coast, actually still a little bi-coastal. Her expertise in human resources comes with a strong background in employment law and diversity, equity, and inclusion. She worked for the United States government and a global pharmaceutical company prior to coming to Scopely. Today, she runs a human resource consulting firm out of North Carolina and LA, which I mentioned. Her long, rich career in human resources complemented by her education. She got her bachelor's and her MBA degree from my alma mater, Florida A&M, FAMU, as well as her JD from Wayne State University Law School. So she also has a legal background. Belinda, did you play video games ever or before you started working with Scopely?
Nope. My only claim to fame with video games is that my son is the voice of Echo in the Arcane series.
Oh, cool. And that's money doing voiceovers. Those of you with amazing voices, you can get paid. Not just doing radio and social media commercials and TikTok videos, but you can get paid doing voiceovers for movies, video games, and you don't have to be a gamer. Between her legal experience and rich experience in all things HR, she got the knowledge that every human resources director, manager, and business owner needs to do to keep the employees happy, productive, and work harmoniously. Even more importantly, she has a passion to share it. And again, I didn't know Belinda when we were at school, and so a friend of mine—
I'm a lot older than Keisha.
I'm about a lot older. But a friend of mine was like, you need to connect. She's a fellow Rattler. Reach out to her. I reached out on LinkedIn, and we're also in the same sorority, Delta Sigma Theta. And so one of our fellow sorors also said, hey, I'm going to put you in touch even closer. But I reached out on LinkedIn. She responded. And then the icing on the cake, or the second stamp, came through, and our sorority sister connected the two of us. And the rest is history. She has been not just a financial partner, but she has been a intellectual property partner. She helped connect us to, and we have a partnership as well with Google Play. How many of you have Google Play or do something with Google Play on your phones? Google Play is also one of our corporate partners. So I want to introduce this amazing lady, and thanks to her husband, her other half. I don't see him in the room right now.
He's gone.
Okay, he was here earlier. But Mrs. Belinda Shannon.
Thank you, thank you. I'm so happy to see your faces here today. As Keisha said, part of what I do at this point in my career, I've had a very, very long career. I just kind of fell into gaming. But part of what I do is I work with the organizations like Scopely to help open up opportunities, not only for career, but also for ownership. You know, part of the business model of these big companies like Electronic Arts, Riot Games, Epic Games, and some of the Activision, some of the other, part of the business model is partnerships with studios all around the world to build content. And so in addition to learning the careers, think about the ownership opportunities that you have when you can start a studio and get in partnership. But we've got some more exciting things to talk to you about today. So I'm going to introduce my panel that we have coming today. We have Annabel Ashley. Annabel, who is the founder of Melanin Gamers, a gaming community that promotes diversity and inclusivity in the video games industry. Melanin Gamers have given panel talks at MCM Comic-Con in London, EGX, and Insomnia. They also put on a variety of gaming tournaments at various locations across London. Annabel is also an award-winning writer and is currently working on a manga-inspired book that raises awareness for sickle cell. What got you into gaming, Annabel? Two sentences.
The story. The story got me into gaming.
The story.
I love a good story in different mediums like books,
Wonderful.
films, games.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome to the panel. Next, we have Mr. Marcus Kennedy. Marcus is a senior director in the Client Computing Group and general manager for the Gaming and Channel Solutions team, where he's responsible for driving and executing Intel's strategy to delight 1 billion gamers worldwide on Intel platforms, as well as a strategy for delivering all client products across our entire channel. He has been at Intel for over 16 years with a prior career spent at Kraft Foods. Marcus has held various roles throughout his Intel career, which include manufacturing, engineering, operations, management, and finance. In prior roles, Marcus managed the team responsible for the global fab sort manufacturing budget before leading business strategy and product teams in the data center group and Internet of Things group. Marcus received a BS in industrial engineering from Florida State and an MBA from Babson College. He loves sports, reading, teaching videos, playing pool, and spending time with wife and kids. What got you into gaming, Marcus?
I grew up in arcades, so I was a gamer since jump.
Awesome. Welcome to our panel today.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. We have Mr. Danny Martin, who is the CEO and co-founder of Esposure. Danny is a visionary and thought leader in the esports industry. As a co-founder, CEO of Esposure Incorporated, and esports subject matter expert at SMU, he has aided in the professional development of students, interns, and postgrads. These students have received esports scholarships and employment from acclaimed universities and esports organizations like Central Methodist University, Complexity Gaming, Pacers Gaming, and Mavs Gaming. Furthermore, he has provided opportunities for many esports players to play with professional franchises. Danny's passion for helping others has allowed him to speak at several high schools and universities on panels in front of thousands of individuals. In his pursuit of connecting everyone to esports, he maintains relationships with the NBA, NFL, and music industry. Danny is always ready to talk about esports and is on a mission of helping 20,000 esports enthusiasts by 2025. Why don't you tell us what got you into gaming?
Yeah, I think, by the way, just thank you so much for just being here. Insight and knowledge is always something that can help your future in any type of way. So amazingly, I think, for me, it's the development of individuals, development of humans, specifically individuals who look like myself, as well as come across some of the same struggles and obstacles. And so, there's an everyday passion in regards to helping someone get some information that they may have not known, so therefore they can help their actual success within the industry that I'm incredibly passionate about. That's why.
So this first question I want to ask you, how, being at Intel doing such great work, I want to know, how have you navigated working in a space where you are a minority, and what are some of the challenges you've had to overcome?
Just jumping right into it, huh? All right.
Let's get into it.
Well, so first, I want to go back to something that Keisha said earlier about the percentages of us in the industry, right? I believe the number she said was 3%.
Yeah, and
gaming.
I can confirm that
Yeah.
because I just wrote a paper on that for my company.
So 3% in gaming, but I think that's not just in gaming. I think that's a true percent in terms of like technology overall. And so as an engineer, so I went to the Joint College of Engineering with FAM, so I don't claim FAM, but a bunch of my classmates were FAM because I went to Florida State, right? Same city.
Well, you got enough rattlers here that you need to be claiming FAMU today.
Right, exactly. So it was great. I grew up and went through college, matriculated through college with a bunch of black engineers and a lot of black technical talent. So it was a little bit of a shock to me when I graduated and went to work in the technology industry that there wasn't a ton of us out there. And so your question was, how have I navigated the challenges of being a minority? I would say it's a daily thing, right? And I don't think it's much different in the technology or gaming space than it is for all of us being minorities in the spaces in which we live and operate, right? But let me give you two quick stories about kind of what I've had to go through. So one, code switching, I think we all know is a thing, right? If you're in a space with your friends, with people, your family, whomever, being able to bring your authentic self to work as a minority can sometimes feel like a challenge. A couple years ago, I realized that that shouldn't be my burden to deal with. That should be theirs. And so I stopped. I stopped code switching. I just say whatever is on my mind, however I want to say it in meetings, and I found out that I'm not going to get fired for it. And so, like, what are they going to do? Fire me for saying that in a certain kind of way?
The people with my job won't let them.
Right. Thank you. And so that's the first thing I've done is put the burden on the others, not taking the burden as an other. So that's the first. The second thing that I've used is, so I'm the global head of gaming at Intel and esports, by the way. And so like Intel Extreme Masters events and all these other things fall in my purview. And so one of the things that I love to do in this space is funnel all of this money that we're making for these global corporations into our communities. And so we were a sponsor of BCGA over the last couple of years. We sponsor a ton of work that goes into our communities. I'm working right now in lots of different spaces across the globe, putting technology in the hands of underprivileged youth and underprivileged communities and underserved communities. And so for me, at least, you know, you talked about your passion for kind of bringing insights. One of my passions is in uplifting our community and being there kind of across the world and being that role model for people, particularly knowing that there aren't many of us in the technology space, and so trying to be there for them and help them kind of get their first exposure to technology is something that I do. So put the burden on them as the other, right? And take the money and put it back into our communities. Those are the two things that I've been doing.
Very nice. Annabel, can you tell us your thoughts on where black women are right now in the gaming industry and what can be done to support women and their success more in the industry? And talk to us about it from the lens of the organization that you have founded and that you lead. So, yeah. So what are your thoughts on where black women are right now in the gaming industry and what can be done to support women and their success more in the industry?
I think, I don't know, I know a lot of black women who are doing amazing things like Keisha, like yourself, and so I just don't think that we sometimes get the funding that we deserve or the recognition. We're not in the spotlight per se because we're always in the trenches propping up others. So I think that's a thing that maybe needs to be spoken about more, the work that black women are doing in terms of the industry, because I know so many black women who are working very hard, but are in the background or in the shadows, sometimes by choice and sometimes not by choice. In terms of what MG does to help black women and women in general, I think making spaces safer for us, so that, as you mentioned, code switching, in different industries, sometimes women don't feel safe because there's a frat boy mentality, especially in the gaming industry, where as a streamer working in the industry itself, you get a lot of, like, for example, I was at an event and there was Call of Duty there, and then someone was quizzing me about the game and saying I couldn't possibly do this, and because I'm a woman, you know? And as a woman, you always have to prove yourself that you're as good as one of the guys. And that's what I found a lot when we go to events. And when I'll say another example too. I was at an event with my brother. I work with my brother at MG. And I was asking someone a question, and then they were answering my brother. I asked the question, and then they would address my brother, and I was just like, is this me? What's going on here? So I gave my brother a look, and he was like, I think my sister was saying something. Thank God I was there with my brother, because it's just like, sometimes our voices are drowned out as well. So again, if we're not feeling safe in some spaces, we need to make women feel safer in spaces. We need to do events that are women only so that we can do mixed events. Because right now we are at the bottom. Black women are always at the bottom, even though we're working the hardest. And that's just a fact. That's what I've seen. I manage the MG Stream team. And the hatred that women get, the trolls, it's much more for black women than it even is for the men. I can see the analytics for that. You know, that's a fact right there. That's just MG. So I think it's about making us feel safer when we want to step out of the shadows, and when we are in the spotlight, championing us. And I think it's a lot of our community that needs to come together and also do that, you know?
All right, thank you. That's pretty interesting. Danny, can you talk to us a little bit more about the gaming industry? Where do you see gaming going in 5 and 10 years from now? And do you think you'll still be a part of it? And if so, how?
Oh, most definitely, right? I hope, right? Where do I see it in the next 5 to 10 years? I'll give the purview of us as a company right now and what we're trying to do. So granted, I don't know if it was in the bio, but I own an 8,000 square foot esports studio and education center in the southern sector of Dallas, about 25 minutes south of downtown Dallas. And we built that space in the center of about 7 independent school districts with the actual amount of students around about 100. One of the largest is Dallas ISD, and it has about 145,000 students. When we built that space, none of the actual schools had esports programs. So we looked at that space as being like a demo hall. And that demo hall, think of like Tesla, when you go into the malls and you get to see the actual car, and then you go online and be able to, you know, customize it and purchase it, and it shows up into your actual garage. Well, we looked at esports as that same element. We wanted to bring educators, directors, parents, community members, you know, superintendents to come and see how we've actively built out an esports stadium inside of our actual communities. And so over time, those same schools were able to understand how to build out a program so they can implement it in their own actual program. And so one of the things that we've been seeing right now is that, you know, now they are looking at the infrastructure to build, but they ultimately now need the actual education, like the curriculums. Also, they need more support in regards to the actual teams. And so what we've been doing is leveraging our facility as well as our expertise to go into schools like in Texas and build out courses for that of the educators to have for free, like intro to esports or management of esports or marketing of esports, while at the same time allowing the actual competitions within the actual area to be, you know, essentially sanctioned by UIL, which is a great opportunity to be able to allow these schools to all start to compete amongst each other and leverage our facility as a hub for them to actually compete out of. So for us in the next 5 to 10 years, we're looking at these actual esports programs grow and now actively having a facility for them to be able to compete. Now what that does now is that now we can actually invite that of sponsors and partners, and even right now, as I'm talking in our space, we have the Mavericks, the Dallas Mavericks esports pro teams that is housed out of our facility. So they're competing right now or practicing before the season 6 of the NBA 2K League in our facility while I'm talking to you guys and ladies right now. So it gives us a great opportunity to create a pathway. So if we're working with high schools, middle schools, and working with the individuals who are in essentially like the G League infrastructure, we can actually create a full pipeline for them from all the way from middle school all the way to the actual pros and bring in actual organizations to look at them from an element of internship and part-time job and full-time job. So, and that process takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. I started in esports in my dorm room, fixing consoles and running tournaments before there was even a term called esports in 2011, right? So in this instance, what we see is that I can start inside of that, inside of this industry by learning, you know, software skills like that of development or graphic designing or tournament organizing, and then being able to say to high school, middle school students that you can actually develop those skills just at that actual stage of life just as much. And so really helping the actual students really understand the value that they have and the expertise that they can actually develop. So therefore, it can add more value to the actual esports pro organizations, as well as companies that are looking to be able to leverage that of the actual skill sets that individuals are developing within the actual realm of esports and gaming, simply by understanding that when you're typing on the keyboard, that's a skill set that's applicable for a job. When you're actively leveraging an actual remote control, that's a skill set that's applicable for a job. Think of it, if you're a surgeon and you have to actively use a remote control to take an actual camera up someone's nose throughout their body, and you're looking at that camera, but you're actually controlling it with your actual remote, those skill sets you're developing while you're playing Roblox or Fortnite or such. If you're architectural or engineering firm, if you're playing Fortnite and you understand that you have to actually build to protect yourself, you're understanding the fundamental elements of foundation building, which in this instance, if I did own an architectural or engineering firm, I'm actively looking at someone who's really, really skilled at Fortnite, like Booga, who won, $3 million playing Fortnite at 16 years. So I'm looking at the actual element of providing the space for individuals to take the skill set that they may not know, but ultimately bringing them into the actual forefronts for the actual companies that are looking at applying that of those skill sets to help their companies grow. And having a place like this in other schools across the actual country to actually see that value, that's where we see ourselves in the next 5 to 10 years, adding value to the infrastructure of this industry. Because if you think about the gaming industry, esports is really leveraging, really adding value to the gaming industry. Because if you're a publisher, you're looking at the fact that if my game is really popular and someone can easily determine who's good versus not as good, those eyeballs equate to units sold for an actual game. And so what we see right now is adding value to the esports side, which will ultimately add value to the gaming side. But it starts by introducing individuals that their skill sets that they're developing outside of just competitively gaming is very critical to the actual workspace, because these actual companies are looking for the skill sets that you're acquiring to help their company develop. So 5, 10, 15, 50 years, we're going to be doing that exact same thing when it comes down to introducing individuals to the awesome world in which we live in every day. And ultimately talking about ownership more than possible. Like when I think about our company, we have better negotiations with the perspective that we own our IP, we own our intellectual property when it comes down to our technological platform, or when it comes down to the IP that we create from an educational perspective. So now being able to showcase to other individuals out there that ownership is important, because it allows you to be able to have better negotiation when it comes down to getting more value out of the individuals that are part of your company, while at the same time allowing you to add more value to your prospective communities, because now you have a say-so into where that capital is going to ultimately positively affect your communities.
Thank you. So I have 2 more questions that I'm going to ask each of you to weigh in on. The first one's easy. The second one, get ready. All right. So the first one, and you, Danny, talked a little bit about the world of gaming. Should students just be looking in the United States for opportunity in the gaming industry?
Is that for me? Because I'm
It's
coming.
Anybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
She's coming from London.
Well, of course I'm going to say yes, obviously.
Where are you based, Annabel?
I'm based in London, so I think definitely there is, of course, a world outside of the US when it comes to gaming. I think everyone knows that, obviously, It's online. Some of my friends, I met Chris for the first time. We've been friends online for ages, and we got to meet in person. So I think definitely exploring opportunities outside of the US is very important and crucial, because there are opportunities outside of here. Of course, this, US is a large continent, and there's lots of opportunities here, especially for Black people. But definitely be looking outside of, your worldview, because there's a bigger world out there than just your state or your country as well.
Just to add to that, because I couldn't agree with you more. Direct answer, no, you shouldn't only be looking at the US, because gaming is huge globally. The largest market for PC gaming is China, not the United States. The largest market for esports right now, besides China, is Europe. We just did last week, last Intel Extreme Masters event was in Katowice, Poland. We had 500,000 people show up in person. 500,000 people showed up in person to watch people play esports, right?
That's
30
crazy.
million people watched it online. And most of those viewers were also not in the US. So if you're only looking in the US for gaming jobs, you're missing an entire global market that you could apply yourself and maybe even take an expat assignment to get out there and experience a new country.
Yeah, that's it. And as a person that works with the people who hire for gaming companies, I can tell you we're doing our hiring in Poland, Barcelona, Mexico City, Portugal. So students, if you haven't figured out where you're going to do your study abroad, pick one of those areas, and while you're there, get to know the people who are in gaming in that area. Don't cut yourself off from opportunities. All right, so this is going to be really important advice that we need to get from our panelists. So I want each of you to tell us, what advice would you give to our younger Black audience who would like to become successful working in the gaming industry just like you? What's one or two pieces of advice? Danny?
Yeah, so I battled this for a minute, and it was imposter syndrome. Luckily, as I developed my expertise in college, I was afforded the opportunity to work in Silicon Valley for about 3 years. So my entrepreneurship professor stated that, hey, you're on the campus and you're actively creating a company. And I was creating that company because I needed to pay for school. My little brother lived with me in my dorm room. He was in freshman at that time, so I brought him from Dallas to live with me on the campus. And I had real responsibilities. And my professor was like, dude, like, you're creating a company and a lot of people know about you. And she said, I know somebody in Silicon Valley that has just acquired raised about $14 million, and they're looking for your expertise from a gaming perspective because they want to actually compete against eBay and create a platform. Instead of bidding, they'll leverage gamification. And so we had to build games, and where individuals who want to buy stuff on the actual platform, they will play the games and accumulate points and use those points for discounts and things on their items. And so I learned by going down there that this is my opportunity to really learn how to build a tech startup directly in Silicon Valley. But when I got down there, it was jarring because as an African American, every time when I walk out of my door in San Francisco to go to the job, everyone that looked like me was doing like really wild things, from cocaine. I'm seeing individuals sell drugs on the street, and street sweepers. Like, everyone who looked like me were in a position of struggle. And then when I get to the actual building, I'm the only African American in this tech startup amongst individuals who've gone to Carnegie Mellon and Harvard and left Facebook or on their way to Facebook. And I'm like, man, I'm learning incredible knowledge right now, but it's hard to be able to know that they're looking at me as coming from a school that is not known. So the challenges that I always had to face was always trying to prove myself and always feeling like I'm not adequate enough. And so ultimately, over time, from a psychological perspective, I had to tell myself that I am worthy enough to be in the same room as those individuals. And after starting, and that took years to get to that point where now individuals know what I do, but I've been so quiet in the scenes because I never wanted to speak up, because I felt like individuals would judge me because they didn't think that I should know what I know. And imposter syndrome was always big for me. And so ultimately, from my perspective, if you guys, from an advice perspective, it's like, knowing that you are special in your own right, and the information that you pick up, that's something that's going to help you when it comes down to other opportunities that you're going to be able to see and actually experience. And you also can give that information to other individuals just as much, which at the end of the day, if you're purpose driven, that information that you share to other individuals is really what's going to help you keep going more than anything, because now you're giving something to someone else because you're privileged, or you are appreciative to know that somebody poured into you at one point in time. And it was my professor that gave me the element to say, thank you so much for pouring into me. Now I'm really going to pour into a lot of individuals, especially the individuals who look like me. So I would say, if you were battling imposter syndrome in some type of facet, meaning if you don't know imposter syndrome, being in a room and feeling as if like you don't deserve to be in that room, understand that that's okay to feel that way, but also look at it as an opportunity, a challenge to say, how can I actively add value to my expertise to make me feel enough that I am able to lead a room or provide as much insight or more insight than everyone else in that room. Because when you do that, you actively now get yourself out of this actual shell, and now you're able to network much better because now you feel as if like you can share information just like someone else. And in the time when you recognize that you can network, you start to see more opportunities open up for yourself when you feel as if like, man, I can share just as much as that person can share with me. So don't ultimately just always feel like you can consume information, but put yourself in a position to where you feel like you can add value with information, and then that's where true partnerships start to happen. It took us 5 years to have a partnership with Dallas Mavericks, where at first they looked at us as like, this is, y'all like the little guys that's over there. We're Dallas Mavericks, and ultimately we're going to smash you guys because y'all doing the same thing that we're doing. But eventually they, after continuously working and actually going and saying, here's our value, this is what we're doing for you guys, that was the moment where they stated that this is a true partnership that can happen, and ultimately now that has added more value to our particular communities, because now we can bring the Dallas Mavericks players, we can bring their esports teams to our particular communities outside of just playing analog ball. Now they're validating the digital landscape from an esports and professional gaming perspective. So all of that to say is, if I had still been in my shell, I actively wouldn't have been able to establish those type of partnerships. And it didn't just happen overnight. It took time, which means you have time to develop your actual skill sets just as much.
Thank you, Danny. Annabel.
Definitely agree with the imposter syndrome thing. That's a huge thing for me. I think for a lot of black people, actually, when I speak to them. For me, advice I would give, advice I wish I had, was networking. Networking is the biggest thing. I would say like 85% of the opportunities I've ever had is because someone opened a door for me that I didn't even realize was a door. Networking will get you, like everyone has talent, but what separates you from being in the boardroom is someone you know. Someone you know is going to get you there. And it's crazy and I would say don't be afraid to reach out to companies, to organizations, because you think they're too big or you think you're too small. Like, Melanin Gamers were sponsored by PlayStation because I slid into their DMs are open on Twitter, and that's how I was just like, you know what, might as well. We play your games all the time. We are huge PlayStation fans. The worst anybody can say to you is no, but if they say yes, like imagine what that can get you. And so that's my like philosophy right now. I might as well just do it, and that's actually how we got EA sponsorship. They slid into our DMs. I was like, is this a thing people do? Just sliding into organizations' DMs or emails or LinkedIn? That means I can do that too. So a lot of the people that we're working with, I just messaged them on LinkedIn or, I slid into their DMs. Don't be afraid to like, oh, what if they say no, they say no. They can, and then just keep asking or keep building on something, Don't be afraid of the word no, because yes feels so fragile to you, and it's like it won't happen. I say just go for it. Just go for it. I wouldn't have started Melanin Gamers if I thought about all the work, all the planning, all of this stuff. I just went for it. I just dived right in, and I was like, I'll figure it out afterwards, like most people do in life. Most people, because this is like, if I have these qualifications, that, I will be overqualified for something that I'm trying to reach for. You're never too small to reach out to anybody, because at the end of the day, they're a person as well, So networking, I can't stress that to you enough. I wish they taught it in schools, because I wouldn't have done half of the qualifications. Like, I don't need this stuff. I can just learn on the job like everybody else does. Yeah. Everyone's kind of faking it until they make it. So reach out to that person that you want to work with. If you're trying to work with this big company, go onto LinkedIn. Who is the person that works for them? Who's their PR person? Who's this person? And message them, and then get your foot in the door. You can like scream and shout from the car park, or you can make decisions from the boardroom. So be in the boardroom and make some decisions.
Great, thank you. And Marcus.
Man, there was so much gold in everything you heard just now. I'm not sure I have much more to add to it. Only just to underscore, I think, you know, if I had some advice to tell myself, it would be, you can create your own path, right? Don't be afraid to actually go try. It doesn't matter, you know, the question was around building a career in gaming. I mentioned I grew up in arcades. I used to build computers to go play tournaments. I used to play video game tournaments. I used to play competitively in a few different spaces, but I was an engineer. I didn't even know that there was a thing known to create, you know, a job to go actually into gaming and technology. I didn't know that it was a thing. I didn't know the job that I have right now was a job that existed in the community, right? And if I did know, I would have been able to just go after it. But there was a point in my career where I could have said, hey, that's something I want to go do. You heard Dante actually talk about it earlier, where he said, hey, that's not done yet. Why isn't it? I'm going to go actually create that. You can create your own path. You just have to not be afraid to go try it. You got to not be afraid of no, to actually go give it a shot. I got this job, just to kind of underscore once again what you heard just now, because as an engineer, I went on a path where I was just like, okay, well, I want to lead a company, and so I'm going to go collect all the Infinity Stones, right? I'm going to go do product. I'm going to go do strategy. I'm going to go do marketing. I'm going to go do finance. I'm going to go do business. And I was just like, check. This is what I heard that you needed to do. I got to go manage some teams. I got to check, right? But that was what was taking me to go run a business that I don't know that I really had an interest in running. But I've loved games. I've loved gaming my entire life. And I told people that I loved games. And somebody who I had networked with years prior picked up the phone one day and it was like, hey, I've been watching your career. You got all the Infinity Stones. He didn't say it that way. You got all the Infinity Stones. And I know you like games. I got this job open over here. Maybe you want to apply for it. So what job is it? We're going to run this gaming organization. And I said, that's fantastic. No, thank you. And I said no because the opportunity was a coverage. It was a temporary assignment to actually go in there. And I was really enjoying the job I was doing. I was checking a box, right? And he was like, yeah, but it's temporary. But man, I think you'd be great for this. I'm all set, right? Dumbest decision I ever made. He called me up 2 weeks later. He was like, that was the dumbest decision you've ever made. Are you sure you want to make it? It's still open. You can still apply. I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep making this dumb decision. Let's go ahead and keep down this path. A week later, he calls me up and says, okay, final offer. You sure you want to keep making this dumb decision and not apply? Again, he didn't say it that way. And so I went and talked to the smartest person I know, my wife. She's over there. Marry up. And she said, if it was the job, not temporary, but if it was the job itself, would you say yes? It's like, of course I'd say yes. It's gaming. I didn't even know it was a thing. I would have gone and done that had I known that was a thing. Of course I'd go do it. So why wouldn't you take the opportunity to try it temporarily to see if it's something that you'd like to go do? So I was afraid of what would happen. I was afraid of what people would say, knowing that somebody called me up to actually go do this. I was afraid that I'd fail. And so I was like, all right, let me give it a shot, right? Took out that imposter syndrome, threw it away, put my application in, crossed my fingers, got the job. 6 months later, there was an organizational change. I kept the job. And since I've grown this business, led to billions of dollars, been able to do the things I was talking about before, giving back to the community, all changing our product lines. If you've ever seen recently over the last couple of years, Intel products for PC games, that's me, that's my business, and I love it. I absolutely love what I'm doing.
All right.
And
awesome.
So you can create your path. Just don't be afraid to say no, and you've got to do all the things that they just mentioned. Get rid of that imposter syndrome, network, find the space for you.
Thank you. So y'all have heard a lot. I know there's got to be some questions. We have time for questions.
I was going to say thank you. We now have time for 2 questions. So if you please come up to the mic. Don't be shy. Come up to the mic. Come get it, introduce yourself. Come on. Introduce yourself and put it out there. Thank you. Oh, real quick. Marcus, you were on the front row. I thought you were one of the students. This whole time you were here, and I want to thank him because he was a second corporation to sign on to become our charter member corporation with BCGA, and he didn't even hesitate. And he's been with us since day one. He's moderated and rocked the last 2 Black College Cons, and we've come in person this year. So I thank you. I salute you. Above and beyond their financial and their intellectual support, he helped us to get PCs, 10 PCs at 5 of our BCGA member institutions. And a lot of our campuses at that point, because our first partner, Sony PlayStation, we only had consoles. And I'm like, we can't be a true gaming and innovation lab without PCs. And he stepped up and showed out, and we have PCs now at 5 of our institutions. And then finally, through a partnership with Lenovo, we were able to get even more Intel Lenovo PCs at our remaining 9, 10, 11, we have 10, we have 12 schools right now, our member institutions. So thank you, I salute you, I love you, I appreciate you. And it's so nice to meet the people that I have.
My name is Ashaley-Anthony. I'm a leader in the administration team here. And I work with the esports team here. And I've been wanting to start like 2K program, tournament. But I didn't really know how to. You said you've done that in the past, and I wanted to know, some tips on how to keep it going.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome because HBCUs are struggling when it comes down to pro-am scene. So I'll just kind of give you some tidbits on how we've done it. And now we've had over 9 gamers that have come through our program that are now in the NBA 2K League. Dave Fry, 2 championship winner. He's come out of our program. He literally is out of Waxahachie. He's now the head coach of Dallas Mavericks team. So that's glad you asked that question. I think right now it's there's a knowledge of pro-am that's there. People are playing it, but the resilience to want to form a actual team and have multiple teams in which they're competing amongst each other, and that just kind of put your thinking cap as if you're a GM of an NBA team, team, and tell yourself like, what am I going to have to do in order to keep this team together? What incentives would I have to be able to do? And you may not have all the capital, but is there a space? Do you have opportunities to work with other partners that school has? But really being able to keep that space to where it's more so like a community, where these teams are competing. So like if you're at the school right now, start to build out a model where you're having not only just one team, but going to the actual campus and then finding 4 teams. We called it, and when we first started, we called it the GEA League, the Global Esports Association League, because I was like, there's no NBA 2K League at that time, so we were just going to try to create it. And then the NBA 2K League announced, and we were like, well, we can't compete with the NBA, so let's try to create a G League. And it was our way of actually having teams compete amongst each other, but most importantly, a lot of those players went pro just because they were part of an actual community where they can share knowledge and tips and really just be a part of that community. And when the 2K League announced, they were already so engaged with understanding how to play in a live space, how to all the different tips and tricks in regards to the games and their builds. This was 2K16, so now fast forward, it's just really building that community. Your job is to build that community and give them a place where they can learn from each other, right? No different than any organizations having that, that area like it's a term, I can't even think of it right now, but an incubator, like a purpose of accelerator or incubator is to go around other people who are creating companies so you can learn how to raise funding or how to build a technological platform. So you're creating that incubator within your program, which then from them, you're giving them an actual safe space and you're leveraging the resources that they may not be able to get to ultimately build that actual program from an NBA 2K Pro-Am perspective. And it's good that you say Pro-Am because I feel like it's so much needed. Right now, we're playing 1v1, 1v1, 1v1 in HBCUs, and it's like, well, I didn't have that ability to play 1v1. I went straight to Pro-Am when it came down to it, and now those players are actually making capital. Like, Dave Fry has won 2 $2.5 million prize purses now, and he's able to use that money, right? It's pretty crazy to be able to know, but he's able to use that money to go impact his actual community, and that's just one person, but we have multiple individuals. So the best way for you to actually add value and have partnerships with it. The NBA needs it right now. NBA 2K League is looking for HBCUs to actually engage with the actual Pro-Am. Everyone is just so naturally gravitating to the 1v1 element. So you have to have the wherewithal within yourself to be able to act as a GM and provide a community to multiple teams, so therefore they can compete amongst each other and sharpen their iron, so therefore they can, when that actual draft, once the combine starts in November or October or stuff, you're already prepping them to actively go to the next level. When the actual NBA 2K League announced, they were like, bye, Danny, I'm about to get drafted. I'm like, okay, What's the next route, you know? And that's the same infrastructure that schools, you know, you have another class that comes in, you should think of it as that same way, getting them prepped so they can go to the next level.
Okay, sorry. What's something new I would bring to this industry? I guess different ideas. Like, what's the most diverse teams always have the best-selling games. When a team is more diverse, they do better. There's analytics, statistics about that my brother could quote to you. So I think more diversity, because games that are more diverse make more money. You know, at the bottom line, it's also a business. So you want to make something that's unique and something that's different. So bringing people who have different perspectives, like even us on this panel, I will bring my perspective from being a Londoner. You know, you guys will bring your perspective from the different states that you live in. Bringing different perspective and creating something which is unique, which is authentic. So I think that is the main thing. We want people's ideas. An idea is the most valuable thing in this world. That's the most valuable thing in this world, an idea. And the execution is the second step as well. So being able to execute something that's unique, that's brilliant, and that's authentic, that I think is what we are aiming for. And that's why we're in these spaces. And also being paid for your idea as well. That's also very important too. So if you're good at something, don't do it for free.
I want to add to what you just said about the diversity side. I'm actually a believer that gaming culture leads culture. A lot of the things that happen inside the gaming industry, you see later on, whether it's technology or clothes or fashion. There's a ton of stuff that actually shows up in the gaming industry and the community first before it kind of gets rolled out. And I'm a believer, kind of follow on to that black culture, black gamers lead that. And so now what you're starting to see, you mentioned that NBA 2K needs HBCUs. They're looking for HBCUs. Riot Games, one of the most diverse companies launching the most diverse games, is looking for black folk to come in and help add their space. You heard Dante talk about how the movie industry and how some of the other spaces are looking to gaming culture and black culture to kind of lead everything forward. And so you asked what we would bring now. I'd say as a gamer, and even particularly as a black gamer, you can probably walk into the door of just about any brand or any company and bring ideas that can help accelerate whatever it is that they're trying to do. And that's not something that was true a few years ago. I was at TwitchCon relatively recently, I think it was late last year, and we were doing a product launch and everything. And I was walking around, and I was just marveling at how TwitchCon, which used to be this space for just kind of streamers and ads, just like traditional advertising, it's now this blending of comics and games. And if you've ever been, I think you know what I'm talking about. Just about every booth had gaming in it at TwitchCon, which is supposed to be about just content and streaming and media, right? And so everybody there, all of the, your HPs or your Lenovo's or Riot was there, Blizzard was there, Microsoft was there, all of them were focused on gaming, and all of them were focused on how do I get black gamers there, how do I increase my diversity, because they all recognize the value of being at the forefront of this growing market and these growing trends. So I think that'd be the one thing that I'd say to you today.
And it's a good time. These companies are looking for talent outside of the normal box that they've been looking in before. They're anxious to move from the bro club culture where there's just a dominant number of Asians or whites that are making these games. They want to expand because they're looking at their audience. And when you look at the audiences in the different demographics, over 70% of African Americans and black citizens of the United States play some form of game on some form of platform. And gaming is just, I might be wrong, but I think I saw something that said gaming is the largest form of entertainment in the world.
Yeah,
Am I right?
It's as big as TV
Yeah.
and movies combined.
Exactly, because 30 million people weren't watching the Super Bowl, okay, you know, but they come and watch somebody play a game on a screen. So yeah, just know that if you want to recession-proof your life, build a career in gaming, own a studio, become a part of it, and understand all the disciplines. You know, studios need creative. They need artists. They need the MBAs who know how to product manage. They need the software engineers. I mean, it's a combination of all of that, and then even your performing arts folks, you know, voice those characters, you know, put that music in, you know, that sort of thing. So there's a whole lot of opportunity that you really, if you're interested in it and you understand gaming, then you've got a head start of a lot of folks.
As well as just do, right? Like Nike says, just do it. At the end of the day, a lot of companies, there's a lot of big companies, there's a lot of multi-billion-dollar companies in the infrastructure, in the space. There's also even more companies that are startups that are smaller. And those companies are actively looking for doers because they may not have millions of dollars from a budget perspective. So they're looking for quality individuals. And typically how you can find quality individuals is you see the actual individuals who are creating their own content or they're actually building their sites. Well, if I needed to hire anybody, which I have to hire a lot of people owning an arena, I have to hire lights, LED, tournament ops, graphic designers, animators, videographers, photographers. Before I bring on anybody, I'm actively looking at their portfolio. I want to see what you've done, right? More than anything, you can tell me all the things in the world, but when I look at that portfolio, I get a chance to get a snapshot of what you're interested in and how good you've put yourself in a position to get better and better and better, because I may only have so much budget to be able to make what I vision happen. So for me, I'm looking for quality, you know, not as much as quantity, being a smaller company. So really put yourself in a position to where you're doing more than anything, because that's what's going to help you be attractive to these companies. You can go to the large companies, but there's way more small companies that you can actually put yourself in that position.
Just do it. Don't be afraid to ask. Thank you to the Black Gamers Matter panel. Everybody should give them a big hand, please. If you all don't mind joining us at the Black College Con, Step and Repeat, we'd love to get a photo of the entire panel.